Hey Internet, how you doing? This is Chuck and Beth Engineering. We're going to do something a little bit different today. We're going to be talking about something a little bit lighter fare, like consciousness. So, pardon me, I just rode up a little hill here, and we're actually located on a local trail, and this is pretty much the peak of the trail here. There's a few feet from here is the actual peak where the trail turns around and starts going back down the hill on the other side. But it climbs up around 150 meters from Lake Brent just down below. So what brings me here today is something that Ellen Watts had mentioned regarding consciousness and time, and not just individual consciousness, but consciousness in general, the concept of the existence of and time. And made me start thinking a little bit about something else a friend of mine did mention around the way of Zen and how that might tie into things. So I started thinking about consciousness of the person, of the individual, and that the consciousness of the individual, me, you, anyone who's watching this, anyone who's lived, anyone who's going to live, represents in time the existence of the universe, or even the existence of the earth, an incredibly small slice of time. The existence of that consciousness on the earth, wherever it is, even on another planet, on another galaxy, the existence of the consciousness, at least in Earth lifespans, is magnificently small in comparison to the time scale of even the Earth. This we know. This is not an unusual concept, but think about that in the perspective of consciousness overall, and that consciousness itself is a manifestation of the universe creating an internalization of its own image. That is effectively what consciousness is, in my opinion. So we've internalized a version of the universe, and we can perceive that universe internally through mechanisms that we don't understand completely, likely of a holographic nature. And this holographic nature takes place in the brain, where we know there is naturally occurring quantum effects happening. So if we extend these thoughts a little bit further and we say, okay, consciousness is holographic and exists in a biological computer that operates in a quantum field, then one consciousness is all consciousness. One understanding is all understandings. There is no distinguishing between one and all. It's simply a perspective. It's the same thing. So if we say that one consciousness, one person's existence, one person's perspective, interpretation of that universe is an extremely small perspective of the entire universe, that very small perspective of the entire universe still plays a part in the entire universe. It's a piece of the puzzle. And because it's a holographic nature, it is the entire piece of the puzzle. The acceptance of that as consciousness basically means that you have one consciousness that extends throughout time infinitely through quantum field effects, through quantum interactions. We're just seeing a perspective of that at any given time, at any given moment. So what does that overall mean? What can we learn from this? If we have one consciousness, one individual, one slice of the pie, one person's existence being just a small piece of existence, that means that when any time before and after that time when there wasn't that consciousness, that perspective, that interpretation, that manifestation, that internalization of the universe, anytime before and after that, that is, to that perspective, the state of normality. It's when that consciousness exists for that tiny sliver of that timeline, that spike of the consciousness, that is that timeline's aberration. That is its existence, that is its contribution. It is when that timeline ends, that consciousness ends, that interpretation ends, that internalization ends, the state of the universe to that timeline returns to normal. Then one timeline is in itself the aberration, and the return to no existence of that timeline is a return to normality. And that, in my belief, is the real way of Zen. The real way of Zen is the timeline without that spike. So to get the full understanding, the true understanding of nature, of the universe, of the internalization, you must remove that spike from the internalization, from the factory, from the timeline, and see it from outside of that existence. For that time, you are looking through your eyes, perceive, all your senses contribute. It's like looking through the fence at a construction zone, right? You're seeing only what you can see from your perspective. There's a lot going on around you. You know what, you can hear it, you can smell it, you can feel it. But your little window, your perspective, your timeline, as you're walking by the window, in that tiny brief existence along that timeline, that's all that you can see. And in that time, in that moment, in that existence, it is the return of that timeline to its non-existence, its non-interpretation, its non-internalization, that actual peace and actual understanding exists. Now, there are ways to get there through meditation, through concentration, and of course, we all get there in the end. And I don't think it's anything to fear. An eventuality, and an eventuality that you can accept or not accept. And acceptance of that eventuality puts you in a perspective one step ahead of where that timeline ends. Because if you accept that, you can see just a little bit further, because that drop isn't such a cliff. It isn't such a looming, impending drop. And without that distraction, without that fear, and without that vanity of the self, of the body, of the flesh, the bone, the hair, without that vanity, you can see a little bit further and get a little bit sharper perspective of the existence as it is on the timeline without the spike. Anyway, thanks for tuning in, Internet. You have an awesome day.